bipartisan group of senators that has been dubbed the Gang of Six is working on its own deficit reduction plan. One of those senators is Kent Conrad, Senate Budget Committee Chairman and Democrat of North Dakota. He joins us now. Senator Conrad, we're really glad to have you with us, especially ahead of the president's comments. Let me ask you, first of all, about the headlines that we've already received. The one that's come out is that the president's calling for $150 billion in defense cuts over the next decade. Secretary Gates in January put forth a $100 billion proposal. Are you supportive of that? Is that, on an annual basis, even close to what we need to be looking at?
It's moving in the right direction. I think we're going to need to do more. Look, I served on the commission. We had testimony from the Defense Department and the top defense analysts in the country that 51% of all federal employees are at the Department of Defense, and that doesn't count the contractors. When we asked them, how many contractors do you have, they said, we can't tell you. And I said, well, how many do you think you have? They said 1 to 9 million. That's a pretty big range.
Let me ask you about this whole issue of taxes and entitlements. It seems that the debate has come down to either cutting your way out of this or raising your taxes as a way out of this. And I know that you've been, along with your Gang of Six, looking at perhaps a more middle-of-the-line way. Pew had said you could do a 7.5% tax increase along with a 7.5% spending cut and get your way out of this entire problem. Why has this become so polarized?
Welcome to Washington. Look, I think it's very clear you're going to have more revenue, but you can do that by broadening the base and actually lowering rates to help America be more competitive. So that can actually raise revenue. On the other hand, we're going to have to cut spending. We're going to have to do it in the entitlements. We're going to have to do it in the domestic programs. That's just the hard reality when you're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that you spend, and when your revenue is the lowest it has been in 60 years as a share of the economy, and your spending is the highest it has been in 60 years as a share of the economy. Clearly, you have to work both sides of the equation.
How badly is this process of trying to find a compromise solution being crippled by extremists in both parties?
Mark, it is probably the number one problem that we confront. Those on the extreme wings of both parties that have, frankly, more say than they really would warrant by their numbers, but they're very vocal, they're very determined, they're very dug in, and it's their way or the highway, and they say, you know, don't touch my thing. Again, when you're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that you spend, you're going to have to do a lot of different things. The sooner we get about doing it, the better, because the less draconian the solutions will have to be. But we're going to have to say to the extremes of both parties, we're sorry, this time you've got to step back. We've got to get some critically important things done for this nation.
Here's something I have not heard. I was hearing it 6-9 months ago. I'm not hearing it today. We ought to cut government spending, but we have to be mindful of its effect on the somewhat shaky recovery in the economy. I'm not hearing concerns about the economy anymore. Is that because the feeling in Washington is the recovery is, if not wonderful, at least on solid footing, or what?
Actually, in our internal discussions, you still do hear that. I think there is a recognition that the recovery, while underway now, is still fragile. If we were too draconian, too fast, that would have an adverse effect. So look, this has got to be done over a period of time. We need to start slowly, but we need to have a big, bold plan that gets passed now and that begins to be implemented now. But we've got to be mindful that we can't do too much too soon, because that could jeopardize what is still a fragile recovery.
Senator Conrad, I'm just curious about whether you think we need to consider real changes to Washington as part of this conversation. That there is such a fear. The American people want cuts, but they don't want them to things that affect them, whether that be Medicare or Social Security, things that they have contributed to out of their own paychecks. And that leads to a real hesitancy among elected members of Congress to make the hard choices we have to make. Can we do this without something like term limits, when people are so afraid they won't get reelected that they do something their constituents want now that could bankrupt our country in the future?
Look, we've done this before. In the 90s, we faced a very serious debt threat, and we dealt with it, and we dealt with it successfully. You remember during the Clinton years, we actually balanced the budget, and we did it without raiding Social Security. So this can be done without fundamental changes if we just face up to what has to be accomplished here. And look, this isn't that hard. You know, at the end of the day, these are relatively modest changes that need to be made. On the revenue side, on the spending side, to have a comprehensive package that reduces this debt by $4 trillion over the next year, which is what is really required.
All right, Senator Conrad, thank you very much.